I ignored him and instead focused on Father. Father, what are you doing? You're still alpha. Dean didn't challenge you, right, Dean? It wasn't even close to a challenge. Father scowled. Doesn't matter, I lost. The pack was at risk. It wasn't and it isn't, I said, feeling my voice rise. You can go home right now, and everything can continue as it always has. God, Father, if you're so obsessed with giving up, you can't seriously think that this, I waved my hand at Brandon, is our best option to lead the pack. Hell, he's not even a good option. Nick, it was always going to be this way. I'm his son. It is my birthright, Brandon said. Not anymore. You gave it up when you abandoned us, I said back at him in a snarl. You don't understand, Nicole. You were too young. I had to leave. I may have only been 6, but I understood perfectly well, my hands curling into fists. Look, that's ancient history. It doesn't matter. All that does is I'm back, and I'm getting Dad out of this mess you've created, sis. Don't call me sis. You are not my brother. You are not my family, I told him and looked to Father. Don't do this. He left the pack and us. He doesn't deserve to be alpha. You may not like Dean. You may see him as a clown, but he'd be 100 times better alpha than him. Please, after everything I've done, don't do this. Father shook his head. It's too late, Nick, he said with guilt in his eyes. It's already done. Brandon is now alpha of the Golden Plains pack. What about me? I asked, hating how meek my voice had gotten. Seeing how you opposed my position so much, I think it's best you stay here, Brandon said, lifting his chin and glaring down at me. Golden Plains is my home, I growled. Father, do something, I pleaded silently. Father's expression was tight as he said, you have a mate here, Nick. Perhaps it's best you did stay here. Hey, look on the bright side, you don't need to do all this, Brandon said, waving a hand at me. Grow your hair, dress like a girl, hell, be a girl again. I'm sure Dean here would appreciate it. Don't worry about your things. I'll have someone pack them up and send them here. Fury took me, and I stepped forward, but before I had a chance to say the words, Father spoke. No, Nick, it's not acceptable. A challenge must be made alpha to alpha. If you try, I will ask Brent to contain you. Father, I growled, but he simply shook his head. Pain seared through my chest, so intense I couldn't breathe. The only time I'd felt anything like this is when Wesley told me Mother had died. I wanted to scream at them, shout, kick, and punch, but I wouldn't give Brandon the satisfaction. No, he wouldn't see me break. Nick, Dean said, looking at me worried, but I wasn't able to answer him. My now dry mouth was glued shut. I walked outside and took a breath, then shifted, not bothering to remove my clothing. I welcomed the pain of the shift, and when it was done, I shook out my fur, casting off the shredded pieces. With a howl, I ran as fast as my injured paw would let me. I headed for the woods I'd gone earlier. As the woods surrounded me, my breathing grew shallow and quick. Panic assaulted me, and all the emotions bubbled out of me. Tears stung my eyes, making me blind, but I didn't slow or stop. I didn't care if I hurt myself. I didn't care if I ran off a damn cliff. I'd lost everything, pack, family, friends, home, and my purpose. I had nothing. Father and Brandon had stolen it all from me, every last thing and person that meant something to me. Father was strict and stern. He had a narrow way to view the world, but I always thought he loved me. I was wrong, and everyone was right. Father only saw me as a thing to be used then thrown away when I no longer served a purpose. Something hit me hard in the shoulder, knocking me off balance, causing me to put more weight on my injured paw than I meant to, and stumbled. I fell, rolling several times before I stopped. I howled a whine before laying my head on the ground. Rogue, I was now rogue, a wolf without a pack or territory, alone. I clenched my eyes, closed as pain tore through me. I wasn't sure how long I'd been laying on the ground when I heard someone walking in the woods not far from me, and I didn't need the wind to bring us to realize it was Dean. He would be the only one who'd come after me. No one else cared enough. Hey there, beautiful, he said, coming to a stop next to me. You okay? I snorted, not looking at him. I didn't want him to see how bad I was. Dean ran his hand through my fur, and I leaned into his touch. It was like a balm to the hurt. I whined softly. How about you shift back so we can talk? I got you a blanket to cover up in. I whined again, but this time it wasn't a complaint. I didn't want to shift, and I didn't want to talk. I know, Dean said, as if he understood me. But we have to talk. I need to know you're okay. I snorted again, grabbed the blanket, and with his help, draped it over me. I growled, shifting back, holding my right arm to my chest, and pulled the blanket closer. Dean rubbed my shoulders, bringing warmth back into my chilled body. It's going to be okay, Nick. How, I said, half sobbing. Father gave the pack to him. How could he do this to the pack or to me? Brandon abandoned us when we needed him, and as soon as he smelled weakness, he dived in like a shark for blood. Perhaps it's better this way. I jerked up my head and gave Dean a teary glare. No, Dean, no way is this better. I saw it on his face. He didn't understand. It surprised me. I would have thought Alpha Brent would have taught him that. I took a breath and tried to think of a way to explain it to him. This isn't about being top dog, Dean. It's not about power. It's about the people. Imagine all your patients at the hospital, every single one of them. I bet you care for them all greatly and will do what you can to help them be comfortable until they can go home again. Now imagine your boss telling you another guy is going to take care of them. This guy is only there for the paycheck. He can't be bothered to listen to the patients and only does just enough so he doesn't get fired. That's what has happened here. Dean Brandon demanded we all, Father, me, and the pack, put his grief at our mother's loss before our own or even Father's injured state. We all refused, and he left without looking back. If something should happen and Brandon was forced to decide between his own needs and the needs of the pack, he will choose himself and leave the pack vulnerable. I know it, and there is nothing I can do about it. Everyone I ever cared for is at risk, and I'm here alone in rope. Dean hugged me. We'll figure something out, and you're not alone, Nick. You'll never be alone, he said, and let out a whistle. My eyes widened as I heard others and Wesley, Sade, John all emerge from the trees. What, I said, looking at them. 1314 Dean came and told us what happened, Wesley said. I couldn't believe it, so I talked to Joseph myself. You were the only Alpha I'd accept after Joseph. Fury made his green eyes lighten to jade, but a small quirk of a smile appeared. Well, perhaps him too, he jutted his chin to Dean. But only if you're with him. I'm with Wes on this that your father would do this to you, Sade said. Or to us. None of us were willing to stay with the pack if you're not there, John agreed. Gratitude filled me as I looked at them and I stood. There was hope yet. They still supported me. They were with me. We'll figure something out. We won't leave our pack to suffer Brandon. If we speak to the others, I'm sure we can get them to agree to allow me to challenge him. I'm sure I can beat him. Sounds like a plan, John said, giving me thumbs up. Let's get back to the house. Don't need the future Alpha freezing to death, and I want to take a look at that hand again, Dean said, pulling the blanket tighter. My throat tightened as I looked at him and nodded, not trusting my voice to speak. Again, he knew just what to do to help ease the ache of my hurt. What's more, without a doubt, I knew Dean was worth trusting. If you were playing a game, tricking me to be with him, Dean would have never brought my friends here to me now when I was at my weakest. He wouldn't give me something to fight for. Your father is okay with us staying there. Of course, Dean said, his arm around my shoulders as we walked. His body heat seeped into mine, fighting off the last of the chill. He's sorry, Nick. Dad never meant for any of this to happen. He only thought he was doing what was best for me and give us the best chance of being together. He held up a hand. Not that I agree with him, just telling you what he said. Good because he's wrong, though I don't blame him for Brandon. No one could have foreseen Father's stupidity. We headed back to the house. Wesley and others went to their rooms, and Dean led me to the room that served as a temporary infirmary. I sat on the bed, and he took my hand and his expression serious. He pressed in a few places, but only one hurt. The shifting appeared to help put things back in order, but to be on the safe side, I would still keep it wrapped up for a day or two, Dean said, taking out some ace bandages and wrapping my hand like before. Thanks, I said, but the words seemed too small. Dean shrugged and grinned at me. No worries. I wanted to say more. I wanted to tell Dean how much it meant to me that he not only came to look for me, but brought Wesley and others with him. Just as I wanted to tell him that I had hoped this might be fixed because of him and only him. He'd given me my strength back. Only I wasn't able to. The words were on the tip of my tongue, and I even took a breath to speak, but my throat tightened and no sound escaped me. Father's lessons of hiding weakness, I guess, were too ingrained into me to admit any of this to Dean. Yet, at the same time, I couldn't escape the feeling as if I was cowardly. I growled in irritation, running my good hand over my head as we left the infirmary. This whole relationships thing sucked X. Everything was so much easier when all I had to do was hit them so they'd fall and didn't get back up until I wanted them to. You okay? Dean asked, still looking worried. Not really. Never would I have imagined Father would be so stupid. I need to find out more about challenges. I can beat Brandon. There has to be a way around the alpha to alpha challenge. I'm sure there is a way, Dean offered. We stopped at my door, and I turned to face him. Will your father help me? He does kind of owe me after all. I hated to ask, but his father was an alpha after all. Well, I wouldn't ask him like that, Dean said with a smirk. But I think he will. I'd have to ask him first. Thanks, I said again. I started to turn to go inside, then stopped and turned back to face Dean. I really mean it. Thanks. Stop it, you're going to make me blush. Dean, I said in a sigh, shaking my head with a smile pulling at the edge of my lips. An idea slipped into my head, and before I reconsidered, I grabbed him by his shirt, pulled him to me, and kissed him. I must have pulled a little too hard because he crashed into me more than anything, crunching my nose just a bit. He made a little grunt of surprise, or perhaps pain. Feeling foolish, I broke the kiss almost as soon as it started and ran into the bedroom. I blew out of breath, my face burning and heart racing. Yeah, so maybe that wasn't such a great idea. Kissing so wasn't my thing. Stupid, I grumbled to myself, pushing off the door and sat down on the bed to think about the next step. The next morning, I opened and closed my hand as I tested its movability. I sat down in the large dining hall with Wesley and the others. I just confirmed it. Joseph and Brandon left yesterday evening, taking everyone who isn't here now, Wesley said as I sat. I scowled, stabbing the eggs on my plate, then winced as my hand complained. It definitely wasn't up to speed yet. Great, so we need to learn everything we can about the challenging laws. There has to be some loophole I can use to get Brandon to face me. Shouldn't you know them already? John offered with a smirk. I scowled at him now. Father never taught me them. I figured when the time came he would. Or what now seemed more likely, he never intended me to be alpha and instead played me, letting me think I'd one day take over the pack. My chest tightened. Was I really that much of a tool to Father? Why doesn't Dean challenge him? Sate said. I shook my head. We don't know how well Dean really fights. He bested Father, yes, but Brandon isn't an old man. Secondly, he's helped me and us enough as it is. I'm not going to have him solve all our problems. Plus, I don't want to get too many who aren't pack involved, and I'm already going to speak with his father to help me with the challenge laws. So no, Dean is not going to challenge Brandon. If you say so, but just for the record I say using Dean would solve all our problems, Sade said, holding up her hands. Not if he loses, I countered, then looked to the others. Wesley and John, I want you two to question the people around here. Under what grounds did Brandon enter this territory? Who was he with? What has he been doing, and where has he been since he ran away 15 years ago? Get as many of those answered as possible. Yes, ma'am, John said, saluting me with his fork. After breakfast, I searched for the alpha. Instead, I found Dean and the others. Hey, Nick, how are you doing? We heard about what happened, Brooke said with pity on her face. Irritation made me tense. I didn't want to be pitied. I'm fine, I said a little stiffly. I'm working on the way to remove the new alpha. But he's your brother, isn't he? Ryder asked. Not where it counts. Fair enough, he replied with a shrug. I dipped my chin at him in a nod. Now, if you'll excuse me, I was going to go speak with your father. Here, I'll take you to him, Dean offered. I'll catch up with you guys later, he said to the others, offering them a wave. He's this way. Dean started down the hallway, and as soon as we were out of earshot of the others, he smirked at me. Unless, of course, you want to continue what you started last night. I'm usually not into the rough stuff, but that was pretty hot. My face warmed and a blush. Sorry, I didn't hurt you or anything, did I? Dean stared at me with a flat, unamused stare. Me and my masculine pride are going to ignore the question. Now come on, let's go talk to Dad, 1415. Alpha Brent sat in his chair, leaning forward with his elbows resting on the top and fingers steepled as he listened to me. I understand, Nicole, but sadly the laws are very clear. Challenges are made alpha to alpha, meaning alpha males only. It's not a dated thing going back to the days where our women died so often in childbirth before passive silvering rose the survivability rate. I wanted to growl and slam my fist against the desk. I felt Dean's hand on my knee, and he gave it a break squeeze. I let out a breath